My name is Lucia. I'm from Tandil, and I want to tell you something that happened to my husband, my son, and me on Route 30. Being from Tandil with family in Buenos Aires and Las Flores, I've traveled this route countless times, and at every time you can imagine, nothing strange had ever happened to us. That's why, until just a few months ago, I didn't even believe in any of this. In the month of April, everything changed. We had just gone on a trip to visit family and also to do some shopping in the capital, and it was when we were returning home that something happened. At first, we spent 2 days in Las Flores, where my husband's parents live. We were just visiting there, and on April 11th, we left around 4 in the afternoon heading home. My husband was driving the car, my 17-year-old son was in the back seat, and I was in the passenger seat. The trip isn't long, it's about 160 kilometers, so we expected to arrive after 6 in the evening. And I insist that it's a route we know well, to the point that we even recognize the potholes at every kilometer. The trip was going well. We were having some mate with some croissants that my mother-in-law baked and gave us. She was a baker for many years. It was daytime, there was no fog, there was no rain. And I want to clarify this so that we take into account that what happened couldn't have been the result of confusion. I ruled that out completely. We were driving down the road and we saw a man walking on the left side of the asphalt, and it was clear that he was crying. And we knew this because when my husband saw him alone and walking down the road, he immediately slowed down to offer him help. Maybe something had happened to his car and he was just walking towards some town. What happened was incredible. My husband pulls over onto the shoulder and we had this man about 4 meters away on the opposite side of the road. When he greets him and asks if he needed help, this man immediately looks at him. His eyes were full of tears and he just nodded his head, but he never said a single word. At the same time, he never stopped and kept walking, going in the opposite direction from us. At that moment, only my son, without taking his eyes off him, saw how he disappeared right in front of him, as if he were vapor. The 3 of us looked back, and he really wasn't there. Although what my son was telling us sounded very fanciful, and we couldn't quite believe him. But we couldn't explain where this man had gone either. The thing was, he had disappeared. We kept going. And as we passed the entrance to De La Canal, a very small town in the area, we saw this same man sitting by the side of the road crying. That's when the 3 of us went on high alert, wondering if we were all seeing the same thing. It was the same man who had disappeared about 800 meters back. My husband stopped the car immediately, this time a little further ahead because we were going faster, and he got out right away. I got out behind him, and after walking about 20 or 25 meters, we realized that for the first time in our lives we had encountered the soul of someone who was no longer physically present, because where we had seen him sitting there was absolutely no one, and there was nowhere to hide either. The 3 of us saw this man, let me be clear. Only my son saw him disappear, but this was enough for us to believe him. Not only him, but also the many stories we've often heard, thinking they're just ghost tales. Honestly, I don't know why this man appeared to us, who he was, or why his spirit is still on that road, apparently suffering for some reason. I want to tell you something that didn't just happen to us once, but twice on the same road. And I'd like to make it clear that before sending this story to the channel, I tried to investigate if there are more experiences about what happened to us, because something tells me I wasn't the only one. My name is Fernando, and this happened to us on Route 41 exactly on February 14th of this year. We had gone fishing in the city of San Pedro, but at a certain point in the day, when the weather was already unstable, it started to rain. We entered the car, but upon realizing it wasn't stopping, we gathered our things and began our return. We left San Pedro, took Route 9 and then Route 41. For those who don't know the area, it heads towards San Antonio de Reco and continues through Buenos Aires until it connects with Route 2. The thing was that we took this route, it kept raining continuously, and about 5 or 6 kilometers from Route 9. Something amazing happened to us, and I repeat, it happened to me twice. It's just that today, I'm telling you about one of those 2 times.
From Route 9 we drove about 5 kilometers. We saw a single bright light in the distance. There was a strong storm, so my brother and I figured it was a motorcycle because it was coming from far away. Then the light disappears and reappears a little further ahead.
The thing is, even though it was clear it was coming from the opposite lane, we never crossed paths again. It felt like we weren't getting closer, which confused us. Then it got so close that we feared we might crash. I flashed my headlights several times, and it was like this light positioned itself right in our lane, coming straight at us. Everything I'm telling you, all three of us saw it, since my cousin was also sitting in the back. The only thing I could do was swerve and pull over onto the shoulder. It was dangerous, but I saw no other option. The strangest thing was that at the very moment the right side of the vehicle hit the grass, this light came right at us, and just as it touched our hood, it disappeared.
Well, we kept driving down the road for about 4 or 5 more minutes. From there, the light shows up again, but this time behind the car, about 7 or 8 meters behind the car. An unknown object was visible to all and pursued us. At that point, I got scared because I could see it in the mirror. I saw the light and actually had to turn the rear view mirror because it was blinding me. I couldn't see. So I had to speed up to about 120 on that road, which is a pretty damaged road. But honestly, fear took over me and I had to speed up. The light followed us up to the bridge on Route 8, which crosses over to San Antonio Areco past the bridge. I didn't see the light anymore. Later, at another time, I would have to look at the photos to check the date. Something similar also happened to us on Route 41. A few months went by. And I went fishing in Escobar. I also take the same route to go fishing with Iago, Route 6, Route 8, Route 41 to Escobar. I got back on Route 41 around 7:30 post meridian, more or less, when we were returning from fishing. From there, night fell on us. We were driving the car. It started to fail, and there was also a light floating in the middle of the road. Remembering what had already happened to us, we decided to turn around and go back to Escobar and take Route 9. We chose not to continue, recalling the events that transpired months prior. I wanted to know if I could share the story to see if it happened to more people or something like that, because honestly it wasn't fun at all.
The story I'm going to tell you happened in the year 2002. I'm a psychologist. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Psychology at the University of the Republic. Here in Uruguay, in the city of Salto, and well, right across the Uruguay River, facing the city of Concordia in the province of Entre Rios, just to give you some context.
Geographically, the place. In 2002, when I was a psychology student, it was winter. More precisely, it was in July when, together with a group of university students, we participated in a congress in Montevideo. That's how we organized the trip to travel together from Salto to the capital. There were 10 students plus the driver, and we were traveling in a minibus that belonged to the university itself. The trip is almost entirely along Route 3 and it takes about 6 hours. That time we left at around midnight to arrive at 6 or 7 in the morning.
We passed through the city around 2 ante meridiem. Almost all of us were sleeping in the van. And that's when the strange event happened that I intend to talk about in this story. At one point during the night while we were sleeping, we woke up suddenly and literally with a jolt because the truck braked sharply. Almost all of us were asleep. The truck suddenly brakes on the road. And the jolt we all felt inside, hitting the seats in front of us. And it was a very confusing moment, going from sleeping to experiencing that jolt. When the truck stops, and finally it's like we're all awake, asking the driver what happened. And asking each other and asking ourselves if we were okay, if anyone had gotten hurt or hit. The driver, very worried, turns around and asks us if we're okay, if anything happened to us, if anyone got hurt, and we were all fine. But asking what happened?
The driver then tells us and points out that he had braked because there was a truck that stopped in front of us, and we almost crashed into it. Indeed, it was a very large cargo truck stopped in front of us, pretty much blocking the road. In fact, the truth is that we barely avoided crashing. But the question is, what happened? The truck driver would have normally fallen asleep and woken up just before veering off the road, but that didn't happen. This driver got out of the truck, came over to the van, first asked us if we were okay. He was noticeably scared, and then he told us what happened. He didn't have vehicle issues, get distracted, or fall asleep. He had to make this dangerous maneuver because the woman threw herself in front of the truck, giving him almost no time to react. In fact, he was sure he had run her over because even before getting out of the cab, he called emergency services. Reporting this accident, our driver also called emergency services.
At this moment, the truck driver tells us and tells our driver, well, go ahead, keep going, you guys just keep going, I'll stay here to wait for the police and for them to take care of this woman. Well, we couldn't really help with anything. At that moment, the truck driver waited behind us as we continued our journey. When we got back on the road and the truck started up again, we slowly passed a long semi-trailer truck. With a trailer, as it's called. Also, when we got to the point where we passed the front part, the cab of the truck, which also had its high beams on, stopped on the road. In front of the truck, dressed in a long white or light colored dress or clothing, was the woman who had thrown herself in front of the truck. When we passed by her, the woman stared at us. We also looked at her, and look, telling you this gives me goosebumps. The woman had anguish and madness on her face. A woman completely distraught, with very big, wide open eyes, who looked like she had been crying, distressed. With her hair all tangled, her hair all messy, black or leaning towards brown, tangled. Those who saw her were struck by the expression in her eyes and the look on her face. We continued our journey while she stayed there, and the truck driver waited for the police.
The trip went on, and after about 25 days, something very curious happened. While at university, I had a snack at the cafeteria. And when I came back, walking through an area where different exhibitions are usually held, I was stunned. And it happened when I found a painting that was hanging on the wall. I was stunned, gazing at the painting with a face. And it was exactly the same as that woman we had seen on Route 3 in the middle of the night.
When I snapped out of it and looked around, I saw that some of my friends were walking around nearby. I called out loudly to one of my travel companions from the truck. When we visited Montevideo, I called him and said, without context, look at this painting, look at this picture. When my friend comes over, he stands next to me, looks up and looks at the painting. The expression of amazement that escaped him was inevitable. And he says, it's the woman from the road, it's the woman from the road. I mean, the same feeling was inevitable. It was inevitable to identify in that painting the woman we had seen on the road near Yuna on Route 3 who had thrown herself in front of a truck. We looked around us, we checked to see if there was anyone in charge of the exhibit or someone who could give us information about the painting or the artist. On the painting itself, at the bottom where artists usually sign, there was a scribble where we couldn't make out a name or anything. It was like a signature, but it was more like a scribble where you couldn't identify any word there. At that moment, we couldn't find anyone who could give us information about the painting or the artist. To be able to talk to that person, ask them, discuss the situation, tell them what had happened to us, and see where that image had come from. And that's how we were left with that curiosity, because we never actually managed to identify who had made that painting or find someone who could give us information about that painting and its artist. And we were also left with questions about the woman on the road, because when the police were called, the truck driver stayed there waiting. We continued our journey. We later wondered what might have happened next. If when the police arrived, if the woman was really there, and if they were able to take her to a hospital, to a place where she could be cared for. Or if not, or if they suddenly arrived and didn't find her, or if something strange happened.